Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the War of Words. In this corner from Charlotte, North Carolina, 242 pounds, nature boy, Ric
I
Flair.
would like to get a weight check on that, please.
And in this corner from Orthroff, Texas, 236 pounds, dirty Dutch Mantell. One fall to a finish, Dutch Mantell, Ric Flair. A lot of problems between these two. The war of words, as we're calling it on this program. Jack, where did this all start with these two guys?
I was trying to pull up the original thing that Dutch had posted that got Rick so mad, but I can't find it. But I did read it when it first came out, so I'm just relying on memory. We know how my memory is here. But, anyway, he was talking about how bad of a match the Ric Flair match was. At his retirement, part one. When we all knew this is not over, but he was very honest. He wasn't calling out Rick as being a bad wrestler. Not that he's had a less than legendary career. He was just saying, hey man, you weren't in shape for that match. It was not a good match. And how did you think faking a heart attack was an appropriate thing to do, during your match? And especially not letting your opponents in the ring know that you were going to fake a heart attack. So, he was basically calling him to the carpet, as many others have done, including here.
Yeah.
And yet, Rick kind of let all the others go, but he decided to focus on Dutch to take his anger out with. And he, talked about, I think one of the headlines I saw was, well, I'm glad they tagged you as a veteran and not a legend.
Yeah.
And, it's really according to where you were at, because if you ever grew up and seeing Dutch wrestle on TV, if you ever got to share a locker room with him, Dutch was a legend. He is to those of us who know him. And, I back Dutch in this. I can understand why Rick got his feathers ruffled, but everybody else has been saying the same thing. So if you're going to try to bury one person, then you need to be out there burying them all. Unless, of course, you have ulterior motives that you might get on their podcasts. So,
Hey, this was the exact words. I found it here.
okay.
It said, thank God they used the word veteran and didn't call you a legend. Just a miserable old wrestler trying to make a buck. And by the way, you never had a legacy to begin with. This is what Ric Flair said about Dutch Mantell. Doesn't even know who Dutch Mantell is, I don't believe.
And then turns around and talks about how he made $300,000 from that last match. And so let's surmise here. Of all the people we know in wrestling, who is the grouchiest complainer out there? Ric Flair. I'll go ahead and fill that space in. And he admits right there in the same deal about, hey, I just did this for the money.
True. Why would they give him? Let's be honest with Conrad Thompson gave him $300,000. Let's just be honest with him. So he took it from not just anyone, he took it from his son-in-law. Am I right?
Yeah. And I have just a ton of respect for that guy. Conrad is just an awesome human being, but and I understand why he did what he did, probably because Rick was hounding about, I can't get anybody to do this. I can't get anybody to do this. Conrad, find me somebody to do. And I'm sure Conrad could not get the last of that Thanksgiving supper down before he said, all right, Dad, I'll do it. But, there were so many ways to go in this match and to protect his character, protect his legacy. you could have, really laid that tag match out to where he didn't come in. Let him do something at the first, let him do something at the very end, and come in and chop a few guys and put a figure 4 on and go home. And I'm going to tell you, every fan would have been ecstatic about that.
Yes.
But he didn't want to do that. He thought he had to have as much ring time as anybody. And, if you can go, I'm all for that. He can't go. Dutch admitted, he said, I'm retired because I can't do it no more.
Yes.
And they're only 2 months apart in their age. So,
Well, this is what he had to say, I guess, after the tweet. I said, Dutch Mantell said, I had people write me, and seriously, people thought he was going to die in the match.
Yeah.
In the match. I think he passed out a time or two in there. He doesn't even remember it. Ric Flair now is trying to leave a legacy. He should have left it alone or changed a lot of things in that match. I guess is what he said prior to it. And he said, because his legacy now is tarnished. I don't know. Ric Flair is full of,
and
always has been.
Yes, that's correct.
That's not a lie. That is not
correct.
a lie.
That is correct.
Your take on all this, Rodney?
Well, I don't begrudge Flair making the money because I would do the same thing. I would make the same money. But Dutch is right. He shouldn't have been in the ring. I always loved Dutch. Dutch is honest. There's one thing you might be getting upset with what Dutch says, but he always comes from a point of honesty. He's not trying to swerve you. He's not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. He doesn't sugarcoat stuff. He tells it exactly like it is. And I'm sorry that Rick's, I'm sorry his feelings got hurt. But he should have had his feelings hurt if he got $300,000, which I'm beginning to wonder if he got $300,000. Okay, I'm beginning to wonder about that because if you got $300,000, you'd be going, woo, but I got $300,000, Dutch. Woo, I got $300,000. I would say that payoff is a lot less than that.
And if he legitimately got $300,000, I can guarantee you $200,000 was already spent at the bars that week.
Well, and that or alimony for one of the many wives he has.
Yeah.
Hey, Dutch said this too. The fans should be saying it to him. Screw you, Flair. He said the tickets weren't cheap for that match either. I don't know what the ringside was. I think it was like $50 or $100. That's pretty expensive ticket just for a big independent show, even though Ric Flair was on it. I would never, ever say F you to the fans who knocked me for a legitimate reason. So the fans knocked him as well, right, Jack?
Yeah. A lot of fans.
For that match.
Yeah.
And he actually told the fans to kiss his A, right?
Yep, he did.
Ric Flair did. And he wouldn't have got that $300,000 if it wasn't for people that wanted to see Ric Flair.
That's correct.
Let me read an open letter to the Nature Boy from Dutch Mantell. He said, Rick, I have a great respect and admiration for your contribution to the wrestling profession. I never meant to ruffle your feathers on my podcast, and I think his podcast is Storytime with Dutch, right?
I believe so.
On YouTube. But I was just speaking the truth about your last match. That was almost 10 months ago, but you're still touchy about it. But I wasn't the only one who mentioned it was subpar. All the dirt sheet writers said it in print and in their podcast. Did you say anything to them to set the record straight? Very few fans got upset over my critique of your match. Truthfully, they agreed with me. If I had just said the match sucked, that would have been an upgrade. But Rick, you came out of nowhere to attack me personally. Why? Telling the truth? It was bad. It was a bad show, is what he said. Period. Everybody he didn't use dang, near universally agreed that it was an abortion. What I want to know is who agented the match, if anyone. You were in there with one of the top wrestlers in the world, Jeff Jarrett. If you can't look good with him, then the issue is you. How hard is it to lay out Ric Flair's last match? All you had to do was strut, yell some oohs in the air, and slap the figure four, what Jack was saying. Hit the bell music, confetti, fanfare, and that's it. My 12-year-old granddaughter could follow that formula. But I heard Rick laid it out. Then I heard he faked a heart attack because he thought the match was ending too soon. What? It should have been in 10 minutes sooner than it did. By the way, Ric Flair has sent in something and basically told him, "Hey, let's call it a truce and let's grow old gracefully." And so that was Jack. Your final thoughts on Dutch Mantell versus Ric Flair?
Well, like I say, I agree with Dutch, and no matter how personally you may feel about Ric Flair, he is a legend. He earned that position. Did he tarnish himself? I think he did. Because as it was revealed during this process, they were talking about all these business ventures that Rick had going. And I think maybe more than anything, he was trying to get free publicity for all that. But he still's got that itch. And hey, look, I just turned 64 Sunday. So I've still got that itch 14 years after my last match. But you know what? I'm 64. I got no business being in the ring. If I were to try to go in and do a match, I would probably look worse than Ric Flair. Although I don't know, I might could do a little bit better. But
would you know your limitations?
I know them right now. That's why I'm not doing it. But Dutch, we've all spent time with Dutch. Great guy. He'll tell you his opinion. And if you disagree with him, but you do it in a way that is a calm debate, if Dutch is wrong, he'll admit he's wrong.
Yeah.
But you don't come shooting at him when he ain't wrong, because he'll shoot back.
Rodney, final thoughts on Ric Flair versus Dutch Mantell, the war of words.
Well, if I was Flair, I'd be more embarrassed by those Car Shield commercials than I would be for the wrestling match. I can tell you that much right now. Dutch, like I said, he doesn't pull any punches. He tells it like it is. And I'm sorry if it's honest and it hurts his feelings. But again, if you made $300,000, who cares what Dutch Mantell thinks? I believe though, he didn't get $300,000. He got something else.
Dutch Mantell, we were riding with him one time to a town in Mississippi, I believe, and he came up with a deal saying some promoter promoted a show, and man, he sold all kinds of sponsorships, and he did all this, and I think I, being the smart kid that I was, looked at Dutch and said, "Well, you know what? If that guy can do it and it can be done so well, get your tail out there and promote a show, then, Dutch." After that, we had a debate over whether or not, and I do remember that Dutch did not ride with us back home. But Dutch was a guy that would debate with you. And when Dutch, so I believe.
Wait, hold on. We've got a latecomer to the broadcast. Here he comes. Brian Young. Let's get his take on the Ric Flair Dutch Mantell controversy, if you will.
Well, first off, it's great to see you guys. This program you use to do the show takes forever to connect. Just telling you. Making sure you can hear me good.
Yeah, you're echoing a little bit.
That's because I was yelling at everybody. I was yelling at Rodney through my setup. The Ric Flair Dutch Mantell controversy. Let's see. If it were my show, I'd be using a lot more F-bombs. But I don't know either one personally. I got to say that right off the bat. But I'm siding with Dutch.
That's 4 again. 4 for Dutch, 0 for Ricky.
Let me say something. What I believe as far as Ric Flair. Ric Flair, when he left the WWF, came back to WCW. I think his matches became bad from that point on. So I'm not for sure that I can really say anything great about Ric Flair after 1992. 74 to 1992 or whatever year he left. I don't know. What year did he go to WWE?
I think it was 92, if I remember correctly.
I think he came back to and everything he did after that was not any good. It just wasn't. It wasn't his fault, basically, but they put him in bad situations, and he had the same match 33,000 times between 1992 and whenever he retired. But Ric Flair is a legend. But Dutch Mantell is too, Ric Flair. You didn't see him go against Ted Oates in Atlanta, Georgia, his first year, and in Columbus, Georgia, sell it out. He was not there when that was going on. He wasn't in Memphis, Tennessee, and saw Dutch Mantell and Bill Dundee sell out the building. He was not in Memphis, Tennessee, and see Dutch Mantell and Jared Lawler pack the Mid-South Coliseum. Where were you, Ric Flair? You were partying somewhere doing the helicopter in some place in some town.
And he didn't see Dutch Mantell revitalize Puerto Rico and make so much money there that it was just unbelievable.
So,
but you know what? Ric Flair doesn't have as much hair in his back, so I guess people like him.
That's the hairiest human being I ever met in my life.
He's a Sasquatch.
Let me tell you something about Dutch, though. Dutch would watch the matches. He would go into a territory, and he would watch all the matches. And then he would go and tell the guys that he was working against. He'd come up with a match that they wasn't having, that they wasn't doing, and he would do the complete opposite of what he watched. That's why Dutch was so good at what he did. The opposite of Ric Flair that did the same thing over and over again every night. Dutch Mantell didn't. And that's the reason Dutch Mantell, in my book, is a legend, because he did know what he was doing inside that ring, and he knew how to draw money on a weekly basis. Not for sure. Past the 80s, Ric Flair knew how to draw money on a weekly basis, but Dutch Mantell did.
Look, I'll tell you this about Ric Flair. Coming to the WWE in 1992 was huge, but he was misused. And like you said, everything he did from that point on was the same match. And it was already sad watching him by 1992. Yeah. That was 30 years ago.
Yep.
It's been a sad state for 30 years. And Dennis Mitchell, thank you so much. Terry Funk is on the shirt tonight. We're going to talk. Yeah, Terry Funk. Flair versus Funk was the best.
You know, he had some good. Ric Flair had great matches with people. He did have great matches, but then he did the same. He exposed the wrestling business as he worked before even Vince McMahon exposed it as a work, because he did the same thing over and over again. Even though people give him a great credit, but he got mad one time at our father for something that Dad said about the wrestling business. Dad was a little upset at the wrestling business at the time, and he said something that maybe he shouldn't have said. But Flair was the worst example of exposing the wrestling business by doing the same spots over and over and over again. I guess he was looking in the mirror when he was mad at somebody. He was just talking to himself. That's all I can gather what he was doing, because he was very bad at that. But hey, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, the matches they had prior to even WCW days. I'm talking about the Carolinas. The matches was tremendous. So, I do give Flair 1974 to about 1990. I give him all the credit.
I talked
Flair versus Harley in the cage was one of the best matches you'll ever see.
That was good. I talked to Ricky several years ago and was talking about his matches with Flair, and he said those first matches in the Carolinas, he said everybody tells me they were great. But he said, I guess it was because our first time really getting to know how each other was in the ring. He said, I didn't think the matches were very good. And I said, well, I think you're very wrong. and he said, well, he said, you go by the fans. He said, we may feel like stuff is crap, but if the fans are biting into it, he said, you still keep doing crap out there until you really get to where you want to be. So by the time they started the other series of matches, they were primed.
Yeah.
And they had to be main event because nobody could follow that.
And, a lot of the credit there goes to Steamboat, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because even by that time, Flair was just Flair the character, whereas Steamboat's one of the greatest workers ever to put on a pair of boots.
Definitely. And they were working Ricky Steamboat's match just like when he was with any of these other guys, Terry Funk, Dory Funk, Harley Race. He was working their matches. Now, to his credit, he could keep up with them.
Yeah.
But they weren't working his matches. They were not going to go in there and repeat everything, in every town they went to.
And to his credit, between 74 and 89, with the exception of Rodney West, there was no one better on the microphone.
It's funny because we all can watch if you go back and watch Ric Flair, you can watch all the stuff he did in the 70s, late 70s in Carolinas, and just tremendous stuff. Now he did become repetitive, and Ole Anderson didn't like him because he was a repetitive wrestler. There were other repetitive wrestlers. Ric Flair cannot get the only bad thing about being repetitive. There were other ones. It just that Flair was more. He did it like he'd do it one week, and then he'd turn around back around and do it the very next week, and then he'd do the same thing the very next week. When maybe wait a month or two before you do that again. Don't do it the very next week. It would be very, very helpful to because really I was in towns that Ric Flair was in the main event and doing the ring announcing. It was drawn horrible. I mean, it was horrible. And I remember saying to Arn Anderson, Arn, you need to quit doing the same match over and over and over again. Well, that's what they want to see. They want to see Ric Flair do that same thing. I said, yeah, I noticed that. I noticed them 400 people that came here to Johnson City to see him. Yeah, they did really good. He's doing really good bringing some people in. He said, well, I guess you want a job here full time. I said, no, not if he's on the main event. I don't.
Well, let me ask you this, and Jack especially. Do you think, this is my theory, and it wasn't even his matches that the people cared about. It was just those damn promos, talking people into the building. The Nature Boy on the mic going nuts way outshined any of the matches.
Yeah. Yeah. And but he built that legacy of having the matches early on in those years that followed through with the mic work, but that eventually turned around. Now, I enjoyed the later years in WWE because he could still go out there and cut a great promo. And they kept sticking him with people to where his faults weren't as viewable. I mean, you didn't see them as much. So that, Vince knew what he was doing. He knew he was trying to milk everything that was still left in Flair, which was a smart business move because he was still well respected by fans. But you still had to limit what he did in the ring.
Well, now remember when he leaves WWF at the time, the week before he leaves, or maybe 2 weeks before he leaves, or it could have been a month, him and Randy Savage had a match that it was horrible. He told him not to do the stuff that he did, made him go back out, do it again. And if they didn't do stuff that he didn't want to do, and Ric Flair and Randy Savage both were pretty well gone after that.
Yep.
Because they were doing a formula match. And I don't think Vince wanted him to do a formula match. No. And he wanted him to do something completely different. He did not want that. So regardless, Ric Flair was going to be gone from WWF at that point because he was never the success in WWF that they thought he was going to be. As well, crowds did not do as well with Ric Flair on them. Ric Flair Hulk Hogan matches were never what they thought they were going to be. They thought they were going to sell out everywhere they went, and it didn't because I don't think people really cared about Ric Flair in the WWF.
Because WWF fans had no idea who Ric Flair was. It wasn't a big deal. Yeah. If he came in 82, it would have blown the roof off of everything, a rivalry with him and Hogan. Yes. By 92, the fans of WWF at the time had no idea who Ric Flair was.
I will agree with that. I think that's what happened. And I think they brought him in thinking people did know who he was. And those fans were completely new fans. They were a completely new group of fans. Rodney, I'm going to get your take a little bit on. Did we get your finish and take on Ric Flair? And
yes, you did.
All right, so I'm getting old. I don't remember. I noticed that Brian is he's not even moving anymore. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right,
he just froze. He's It's like
I just look so good in that image that I guess it froze on me.
All right, let's talk to everybody real quick. And what's causing all this from Mako? Evidently, Ric Flair is causing all kinds of grief. I think Dutch might have started it, but hey, still, that's. But who hasn't Ric Flair talked about?
Dutch likes to start stuff.
Yes, he did.
All right, let's be honest. He said, let's start a rumor tonight and see how far we can get it.
He does. I don't think he holds a candle to the way Rick stirs the pot, though. So I don't know.
Glen Allen Shelton. Hello from Glen Allen Shelton. Let's see. Mako said Dirty Dutch. I'm guessing he's taking Dirty Dutch's side on that.
I don't know.
Mickey Mayfield. I like what Flair said. I would love to redo it, but I got paid $300,000. So there's that. Well, I would ask for at least, if I was Conrad, I'd at least ask for, I don't know, $295,000 of that back if I was Conrad, because he was the one that put everything into it. So who expected the match to be any good? Who? Tell me who.
That's a good question.
This is. We could have been better than that, though, couldn't it?
It could have been a lot better. And if you ever go watch that match, if you can set aside the visual of Ric Flair and look at how great Jeff Jarrett was in that match, and can't think of it.
Jay Lethal.
Yeah, Jay Lethal. They earned more than $300,000. If they got paid less than Flair, there was an injustice there. Because if it were not for somebody of their caliber, I think we'd still be in there pressure washing the poop off the mat of that match.
Hey, did he really pass out twice?
Yeah.
He really did. He wouldn't have.
Oh yeah.
Well, he hadn't slept. He's partied all week. I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking, but I do admire him from the fact that he is 9 years, I think, older than me, and he still hasn't grown up. So there's still hope for me.
I have not watched the match, so I can't really say if whatever.
I highly recommend.
I can't bring myself to watch it. Honestly, I think I would feel bad afterwards.
Did any of you watch Ricky Steamboat's comeback match after that?
I did.
That was impressive.
Rick's always been that way, and Rick will straight tell you if he can't perform up to a certain level, he was not going to do it.
And he's in his 70s, correct?
Yeah, I think
it was his 70th birthday, yeah. I think.
So he looked great. Looks magnificent.
But he cares about his legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want to have a match with Ric Flair, I've noticed.
And now we know why.
Oh, man, that's bad. All right, Richard,
that's what they should have done. They should have added a defibrillator and oxygen during the match that Flair could put on. That would have been fabulous.
Richard,
Flair!
Y'all give us this defibrillator? No.
Because we really thought he had a heart attack.
And then he hits him. Then he takes the defibrillator and hits him and then beats him with the defibrillator.
Good evening, gentlemen, from Richard Hood. Stuart Kemp said, "Hello, all. Dutch sometimes get under feathers. So does Flair. I love getting the popcorn."
That's right.
Jimmy Ellison said, "Dutch is right." Mako, evening, Mr. Hood. Mickey Mayfield also said, "In their prime, who would you get, Ming or Wahoo?" I'm going to give Wahoo that one.
It'd be close.
Wahoo was a mean man, though.
I know that Wahoo had a healthy respect for him and Ming for Wahoo.
I wouldn't want to have been in the room.
No, I wouldn't want to be in the building.
Because you would get beat up trying to get
collateral damage is what happened.
I'd be standing there with the cell phone just saying which one I need to call an ambulance for.
You don't ever heard of Wahoo getting in too many fights. I think people do not to mess with him.
Well, in the book, where is it here? Does talk about a few scrapes that he got along the way. But
okay.
it never worked out well for anybody. Most of his were in the bar, not in the dressing room.
Who do you think, Brian? Wahoo against Ming?
From what I've been told about Wahoo, I don't think Ming would have even looked cross-eyed at Wahoo. But I think, I can't picture Greg Valentine with an I Broke Ming's leg shirt on. So Wahoo, it's all day Wahoo.
Rodney, Wahoo or Ming?
I go with Wahoo.
He
Being
was
that
a big
we have personal experience with Wahoo, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, he hurt us as kids.
Yeah,
So-
he didn't even mean to, and yeah,
Love
he had,
Wahoo.
he had bracelets and a watch, and tore our ears off when he got us in a double headlock.
Yes.
Tore our ears
You're
completely
lucky he didn't
off.
chop you.
Well,
We didn't get the chop.
I'll,
he
I'll,
didn't get the
I'll,
chop.
I'll give my pick next week because I can't remember where I put my Ming shirt at yet.
Oh, Wahoo in a match, Ming in a bar fight. Wahoo was mean. Nobody wanted to really mess with Wahoo.
Harley raced over both of them.
This is true. Yes, Harley could knock you out with one punch. So
Man, that was the stiffest handshake I ever had in my life. Woo!
Charlie Platt does a great Harley Race impression.
Yes, he did.
Does a great. The man is paying for how many wives? 300,000. It goes a long way for Mako. Hey, did he ever get divorced from this girl he's with now, Fifi?
No, they're back together, and I'm glad because
Fifi,
Well,
but
I mean,
he'd probably passed out in an airport lounge right now if it wasn't for her. I know her, and I'm telling you, he don't deserve her. She's great.
Glenn Allen Shelton, is it the reason why Jarrett went to AWA back Flair one? I'm not for sure what that. May have to send that back again. I'm not for sure what that said. Y'all understand that one? Because I'm just not reading it right.
I'm not sure why Jarrett went back to AWA, but I guess Flair only did come to Memphis one time. I don't know.
that's because he got a payoff.
Yeah. Well, I didn't go
Yeah.
back. But actually, I
And
never
it was
got
a
my
full
payoff.
house. We know that, and he didn't want to give us a. And it could be that Jarrett felt like he could also draw without him as well. Save him out and didn't have to give him 10%.
Hey, have y'all seen it though when he's there? Tremendous stuff. Now he went a couple of times because he went against Jerry Lawler once. He went against Coco Ware once. He got mad because he was supposed to go against Bill Dundee and didn't know who Coco Ware was. So I would have told him it didn't matter. You're getting paid, so just come and work. I think Bill Dundee did tell him that. Dr. Philbo Grice, hello. All right, Stuart Kemp. I don't know if all this will get on here, so I'm just gonna read this. We have a lot who think they can go. We see George South, Jimmy Valiant, etc. We have those Comic Cons, WrestleFest, etc. to see your favorite guys. I have loved CAC to see guys I haven't seen in years. This is a great opportunity to see them without them stepping in the ring. I will agree with that. At Waterloo, Iowa, for National Wrestling Hall of Fame meeting, the guys was wonderful. Yeah, we've said that even with some of the Continental Championship Wrestling reunions. They just really don't need to be in the ring. They just don't need to be in there because you feel bad when you leave there and you see a guy that you idolize and they had to get pushed up in the ring and they had to take the ropes down so they could get out.
And for me, and I think I had a great idea for that one. We need to make sure to lower the ring all the way to the floor. That way they just have to walk up.
Just get a
kinda roll in.
hydraulic lift.
That's right. That's right.
Because I'd have to have one.
Mako said Dutch went for the low hanging fruit.
Mako just turned heel.
That's right.
Let's see. Happy birthday. I think that's for you, Jack.
Thank you.
Let's see. Mako said there's a few active that look worse. Peter Avalon. All right, Brian, does he look bad? Peter Avalon?
He doesn't look good. I mean, look at me. I can't say anybody looks bad. I mean, I have a mirror, so I can't.
Bob Armstrong always used to tell us, Rodney would say, boy, I tell you what, that guy still looks good. And he said, no, he never looked good to begin with. That's what he
I saw Eddie Sullivan at the Gulf Coast reunion, and I said, Eddie looks the same as he always did. And Bob said, yeah, that's because he never looked good in the first place. So I know.
Bob was very
Oh, well, I about fell out of the floor. I went to visit them at their house, and automatically, you gotta stay and eat. You gotta stay and eat. So I spent the whole afternoon with them. It was a great time.
Dennis Mitchell, let Ric Flair be Ric Flair, better than Ric Flair. My favorite matches of Ric Flair was against Terry Funk. Brian, you want to talk about the matches with Terry Funk while we're here with this?
The Terry Funk matches were not Flair at his best. It was Flair got that big, baby face turn again, and then when Funk got in the ring and just choked him and put the bag on his head and, went nuts, it was all Terry at that point. Terry sold that program. Terry sold those matches, and Rick collected a payday. By that time, Rick wasn't Rick, but Terry was still Terry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, the bag over the head, Terry Funk had to go back on television and tell people not to do that on the very next
TV. So. It's funny. We a shameless self-promotion here on my show, Transatlantic History Ramblings. The last two episodes were roundtables on territory wrestling of the 70s, featuring the one and only Rodney West.
That's right.
Also on the panel was the great Terry Sullivan from the Sheik's Big Time Wrestling Detroit. And he told the story about the time Terry Funk knocked him out on the air live. He never had to go on and apologize for really hitting the guy, but he had to go apologize for, fake putting a bag on Ric Flair's head. Yeah. So times changed between 72 and 82.
Well, now TBS was really bad at that time for stuff like that. They probably said, you either apologize or you're off of television. Bruiser Brody kicked the man out of a wheelchair, and it almost lost the TV station. They told him that he's fired. We want Bruiser Brody fired. He's gone. Buck Roby didn't like it. Jim Barnett said, well, my boy, you're fired too. So he fired him. He couldn't lose his TV.
No, that was TBS. You couldn't lose it. He's right.
Dennis Mitchell, Space Mountain. Woo!
And they did edit that out. That you did not see the kick out of the wheelchair. They did edit it out, but then on top of it, then they still.
Well, he also ate a American flag on television.
Yeah,
and they had to edit that out too. That was just another. And why he did it, I understood why Bruiser Brody did it. He was going against Dusty Rhodes, and he said, if that's the American dream, he had a flag and he did, then I don't want a part of the American dream. That's what he said. That's, but I understood where he was going with it. You just couldn't do that on TBS.
And I would think that Gordon probably complained as well, because he roughed him up a few times out there.
Yes, he did. He did not like that. Gordon had the little power as well. So,
well, at that time, Gordon was also hurt. So just the slightest thing, and it would knock him over.
Mickey Mayfield, ask Ole how he feels about Flair.
Ask Ole how he feels about anybody.
Everybody is SHIT to Ole. But I'm telling you, we got along with Ole. We got along. And our father got along with him good. Yes, he fired him in 1983. But I don't think it was I think he just couldn't afford to pay him anymore.
That's right.
And he got rid of Dad and Les Thatcher at the same time because he didn't want to pay them, because Jack and Jerry Briscoe were going to come in and do those jobs. Then they found out, Jack and Jerry Briscoe found out they didn't know how to do those jobs. So, because they really didn't. Because they would ask, well, who does that? Ronnie West did that. Well, who does this right here? Ronnie West did that. Well, who does this? Well, Ronnie West did that. They said, well, what did he not do here in this company? He said, it did the majority of everything that happened in that company. He was the one that took care of it. And I don't think they understood it. I don't even know if Ole knew that, because he didn't know what the agreement between Dad and Jim Barnett was. He didn't know what they were doing. A lot of people will take a lot of credit for the stuff in Ohio, but our father's the one that went to Ohio with a with $100,000 in a suitcase to pay all the bills that the Sheik didn't pay. And he went through the airport and they said, "Sir, what are you doing with $100,000 worth of money?" He says, "Well, I'm with Georgia's Championship Wrestling, and I'm on my way to Ohio to pay some bills." That was, but Ole was not. He's not as mean as people think he is. Now, he didn't want to be your friend, but he was booking you. If he's your friend, he couldn't fire you when you went drawing.
Let me ask you, and I think Ole can detect if you're disrespecting him. He can detect that right off the bat. And I don't think Ole could ever say that we disrespected him. And I think we always had respect for Ole.
Now, since you guys knew Ole, do you characterize him as more professional and serious or egotistical when it came to what he believed in the business?
Professional. More professional. Yeah, because I've seen him more than once put people right over in the middle of the ring.
Yep.
He didn't care. Ole didn't care. He put Thunderbolt Patterson right in the middle of the ring at the Omni, with the silver dollars and the Georgia television title. I mean, it was the Thunderbolt hitting him with the atomic drop in 1, 2, 3, and nobody came. There was no after nothing. Thunderbolt walks out with the silver dollars and the belt, and that was the end of it.
Mike Davis. He put Mike Davis over right on television to try to get him over. So I think Ole was about business. You'll hear people say like Jim Cornette. I don't like Ole. Well, because he told him he looked like a clown, and honestly, he looked like a clown. If you go back, look at the tapes, he looked like a clown. He did not look like a wrestling manager. He looked like a clown. He dressed like a clown. All he needed was a red nose, and he was a clown.
That's what he said.
And Cornette can get mad about that, but he dressed like one. All he asked him to do is go to a suit that doesn't have all them colors. He said you need to get away from that.
And possibly, I think, said something about the tennis racket too.
He wanted it gone as well. And why did it matter? It was because he had been doing it since 1984. It was time to get rid of it. And he also said bad things about George Scott. And let's just be honest, George Scott was going to get rid of him because they'd been there a long time, and he would do the same thing if he was booking. So that's Flair with Piper. Good stuff in WWE. Always that was WWF, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was not WWE yet. WWF. Flair with Piper.
Good stuff in Mid-Atlantic, too.
Yes. Ole can't stand Flair. No, he does not like Flair.
We love Ole.
Ole hates everything. Ole hates things that you believe what you're talking about. Ole drew the money. People can whatever they want to say about Ole Anderson. I don't care what. He drew money from the time he got in the business until the time he got out of the business. You put Ole Anderson on the card, he would draw. It never failed. And as Ole would always tell him, there's a difference between me and you. I actually drew the people to get my check. You were actually being given the check. And that was exactly what happened in WCW. Everybody was just given stuff. They didn't have to. There's our good friend right there. Bobby Eaton's first tag team partner. And hello, everyone, and hello to you as well. John Davis.
What was his name?
Orville.
Horrible.
His name. Anyone looking for all-star wrestling cards, 82 and 83, years in great shape? Well, possibly, yes. Email us our messages on our Facebook page, and we'll get back with you. Unless you're wanting a lot of money for it, and then you get in touch with Brian, and he's got he's got all the money.
I got $1.
Hey, while we're doing this, before we move on, push the book there, Brian.
Yes, I want to push the book, The Wrestlers, Masters of the Craft of Professional Wrestling, available at all fine booksellers and Amazon.com. Now, there it is. I also want to push Not just because it's Transatlantic History Ramblings, the greatest, funniest, most vulgar podcast on the internet. It is a history show. Most episodes are not about wrestling, just to let y'all know. But the last 2 episodes, it was a 2-parter featuring the legendary Rodney West representing Georgia, the great Terry Sullivan representing Detroit, and Nikita Brezhnikov representing the WWF. And we had some fun times.
It was, and I'm gonna tell you, it's worth the time to get over there, especially for people for this program for sure. I mean, it was non-stop history, talking with Terry Sullivan, talking with Nikita, who knows everything there is to know about the WWF, and it was super. What should have been, I thought we was going to go for, what was it, an hour or whatever. We went 2 hours or so.
We were on like 2.5 hours together, and we had to cut it off because I think Nikita had to go because his wife was yelling at him.
That's right. She had to leave.
But I think we would have gone another couple hours too.
Sure.
I mean,
it was just. I mean, it was intense. It was awesome. It was really awesome.
Hey, you sent me that link, right, Brian?
I sent you both links, yes. And the first episode, every show, my show starts out with the ramblings. History Ramblings, me and my co-host, and we just talk about what's going on in our lives and stuff in history. Then we go to the guest. There's always a timestamp, so if you don't want to hear me and a woman from Wales talk history and tell bad jokes, you can skip right to the interview.
Oh no, that's good.
But the second episode, my dear beloved co-host Lauren Davies, we love you, has had some things going on in her life and her family, and she wasn't able to attend the second show. And we got a special fill-in co-host, my own private movie star, the great Jeremy King, horror movie icon, actor, star of Scare Package 1 and 2. He was in Pirates of the Caribbean 2, big movie star, co-host of the show. So the Ramblings feature the one and only movie star Jeremy King, and then the matinee idol, Rodney West. My mother thinks Rodney's adorable.
Victor Nash, reach the sky, boy. The great one has arrived. Hello, all. How you doing? Rick Brooks. Hey, guys and everyone. I'll also side with Dutch. John Davis, evidently, sides with Ric Flair.
I don't think we should read into that.
Well, wait a minute. He said, I loved them both. Watched them in the I think he's saying the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance. I think.
Right.
It could be NWA. I'm not sure. Let's see. Texas Death Match, my favorite. John. Yeah, I always like the Texas Death Match. I don't think they know what the Texas Death Match in wrestling anymore. No. I don't think they understand that concept.
They've renamed them all.
See,
they've got a great idea of what a street fight is, though.
Aren't they all?
Also, I'd like to ask your guest, what did he think of Bob Backlund?
Bob Backlund. We actually went really in depth with Bob Backlund on History Ramblings, where Nikita, Rodney, and Terry and myself all agreed, if you go back now and watch Bob Backlund matches, you will be amazed how technically sound he was, how good he was. And Nikita laid it all to rest. That everyone's like, oh, the business was dying and Backlund was boring and they needed Hogan. Nikita will tell you the dates of every event that Backlund headlined, and the crowds went nuts. Nikita says it much more colorfully because he swears more than I do. But he affirmed he was there in Baltimore and New York and all those big WWF shows. And he says Backlund was over like you wouldn't believe. And I think Backlund, especially if you go back and watch some of his WWF championship matches, go watch the match he had, any of the matches he had with Greg Valentine. You know, you'll watch a 45-minute match that'll just have you on the edge of your seat. I mean, they were great. He was such a sound technical worker. And he was that last thing before it started to go cartoony.
Yeah.
He was the last, in my opinion, the last legitimate, believable aspect of that. Before it became more entertainment than sport, Backlund was the last of it. As for Jimmy Golden, loved him when he was in the stud stable. Didn't like what he ended up doing in WWF. I never saw any of his Smoky Mountain stuff, so I can't speak to that. But he was a lot of fun in the stud stable.
Yeah, Jimmy, one of the greats. Never really wanted to go anywhere, really. In his prime, when he was at his prime, he never really wanted to go nowhere. He would stay right there in Tennessee and Alabama. I got cards of all these guys you're talking about.
Awesome.
There you go. Mako, King Tonga sacked Montreal and Quebec. Thank you. Give me a drink of water. He would take Wahoo because Tonga would take Wahoo's eye out in 5 seconds.
Je parlais un petit français de Québécois.
I'm not for sure what he said, Mako, but I don't think it's good.
Oh, it was actually very nice, but I won't tell anybody out there. There was no cuss words in there. But he would have taken an eye out, yeah. I don't doubt it.
Well, Ole Anderson got into it with the Wild Samoans one time, and I can't remember. I think it was Marietta, Georgia. And he told them, he said, well, listen, you may whip my tail, but one of you will lose your eye. They decided they just back up because neither one of them wanted to lose an eye.
Now, that's Samoan SWAT team, not Alpha.
Samoan SWAT team. Yeah.
I was going to say, that wasn't Alpha and Sika, was it? Because they would have said, go ahead, take an eye, we'll eat you.
No, we're not
who is it a beast? Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be in the room. What about Tommy Wildfire Rich against Ric Flair?
It's like looking in a mirror.
It's
a Marx Brothers mirror sketch.
Tommy Rich worked against Ric Flair in Mobile, Alabama at the Fort Whiting Auditorium. And Tommy had, this is tea, but Tommy wasn't drinking tea that night. and he was really not in good shape, and Flair was very mad about it. I had just, for some reason, after the match was over, I had went in the back, and I don't know why I had been back there. Maybe give somebody some money. I'm not for sure. But he cornered me and said, I will never come back to Mobile, Alabama ever again. Put me with that guy, Tommy Rich. I'm the world heavyweight champion. If he hurts me, then I'm in trouble. And I said, I understand that. And I'm wondering to myself, why is he yelling at me about this?
Because you were there.
You're the only one he could find.
Everybody else was gone, I guess.
Everybody else was gone. They were as soon as they hit the match, they all got in the car and left.
So I leave back in the back. I don't know what, I don't even remember why I was back there. I come back and I find my dad and I said, listen, there's a problem. Flair's very upset. He said, well, what am I supposed to do about it? I said, well, I don't know. He's upset. Maybe you need to go talk to him so that way you could tell the rest of the people. Well, he did say that he would never come back to Mobile, Alabama. They booked him in Mobile, Alabama against Bob Armstrong. Neither one of them showed up in the main event because Flair said he would never go back to Mobile, Alabama again. And he told him that. I guess they were going to book him anyway just to show him that he would go back to Mobile. Didn't show up. I don't think Ric Flair and Tommy Rich gelled too well. I don't know that Ric Flair much cared for Tommy Rich. I don't think he was a big fan of the Wildfire. Somebody say something bad. I'm not for sure what that means. Mako said, I love you guys. Well, thank you so much, Mako. I do appreciate it. Dusty Rhodes said that Flair was a flim-flam man. And he has said that. He was in a interview, and he said that Ric Flair has always been a flim-flam man. What do y'all think? Ric Flair, flim-flam man?
By the definition of what a true flim-flam man is, no. But he's a bit of a con man, a bit of one, but not a true flim-flam man.
Jack?
Yeah, I'll agree with Brian on that.
Rodney?
Well, let's think about this for a moment, okay? All right, so talked about riding around all of his Lear jets. The company paid for that. He didn't have a jet. All the limousines, the companies, the Crockett's paid for the limousines to pick him up. So I have heard about these con people that go into towns and they would get the limousines and they would have the plane that would fly in, and then they would con people out of their money because people thought they had money. So yeah, that's Ric Flair. So there you go. Right, I have $5,000 rolls, but I still owe Olivia. I'm doing it on the payment plan.
This is true. This is not a lie. You did owe Olivia several times for rolls.
Oh boy, I've tried to call Rick. He won't return my phone call.
Him and Greg Valentine both at some point owed Olivia.
Oh boy, yeah. That's not one, and that's not one to own because eventually she's going to find you.
Yes, and she was from, I think she was from Ireland, so she knew a lot of some heavy.
Very, her language was fantastic. Would fit right in good right over there with Brian's show.
I gotta say something. Rodney and Terry never once cussed the whole time. Me and Nikita are like drunk sailors, and Rodney and Terry were so professional and so good and never cussed once. Even when Rodney would tell stories where someone did, he would bleep himself.
That's right. I just,
such a Southern gentleman.
Ole was the man on the Superstation WTBS. Well, Ole was a whole lot more than the man that was on the Superstation WTBS. We are going to tell the story of Ole Anderson and his whole story of Christmas Tree Farms and a little bit of all that coming up in 2023. Who'd win between Ric Flair and Tommy Rich? Well, we already distinguished that he only wrestled him a few times and he didn't want to wrestle him. And yes, Ric Flair did beat Tommy Rich that particular night. So let's see.
The one thing that everyone needs to understand, and I'm not, as you know, trying to start anything.
No.
But in a unfortunate incident with Tommy and Johnny Rich at a bar, Tommy left Johnny to the wolves, so to speak, and ran to the car and locked the car door and wouldn't let Johnny back in. And Johnny did not do well against his opponents that evening, with Johnny saying, "Unlock the door, Tommy! Unlock the door!"
That's the reason you should go door. We told Tommy Rich after that. The Blue Cyclone, I think, is what we told Tommy. So evidently, you were the Blue Cyclone. You was the guy that locked the door on poor old Johnny. And wouldn't he said, "Well, I tried to get out, man. I tried. I just couldn't get out."
I locked that door down. I couldn't get it back. Johnny's hiding up underneath the car.
He didn't fare well. He was stabbed very badly. So
yeah, that was the bad thing. But yeah, Tommy, don't ever get in a fight with Tommy if you think he's going to help you. Lock you down. I can tell you what would happen if a bear ever got between Tommy and you. You'd be the one he'd throw down to let the bear get you.
Mickey Mayfield, one of these days I might put my ringsiders up for sale. Let us know, Mickey. We'll take them off your hands there. I used to have a ton of those until they got wet, and now they're just they're a block. I still have them. They're just a block of programs. So greetings from what's the name of that?
Guelph, Ontario.
Black Bar.
Wonderful town.
What do y'all think about NWO wrestling during the Smashing Pumpkins concert that's happening this year? That's the only way.
He's got to do something for money.
That's the only way they can get a crowd for the National Wrestling Alliance.
Well, I don't really want to say too much over there. I talked to Billy.
Well,
and
tell him I'm very. His product is really embarrassing. I'm sorry, but it is.
He's doing it all himself.
Well, he needs to find somebody else to do it.
He's booking himself. He's doing all the creative. He's doing it all himself, and I think that's a mistake. But I don't think they have the money coming in at all to do anything. Putting them on with Smashing Pumpkins. Look, he's only doing some. I believe he did not say this. I will not say that he said this. We never even mentioned this at all in the brief chat we had. I believe he's only doing Smashing Pumpkin show to get more money to put into NWA. That's his passion.
Well, I would highly recommend, and I'm not, as you know, I'm not trying to start anything. I would highly recommend that he take some of his money and hit this beast somewhere that somebody could trade him how to work. And so that would be nice.
Yeah, the man in the mask. Oh my goodness gracious! On that last episode, or one of those episodes he had.
I have a feeling that Ric Flair's performance is much better than the Beast was.
Now, to his defense,
Who, the Beast?
No, Billy's.
Okay.
He absolutely loves it. I mean, that is his baby. It's his childhood. That's his passion. God love him for that. And I'm not saying like when I talked to him, it's not like I called him up and said, "Hey, Billy, it's Brian." No, it was just a, chat through a mutual friend type of thing. But he really cares. He really loves it. But he needs a Ron West.
Yes. Yeah.
Is what he needs.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a whole team of people. He just needs one person that really knows that business that could make a somewhat go of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's missing something. I watched the whole show and I've watched a couple episodes and I'm thinking it's missing commentary, not very well, not very good. Comedy guys, and they're not even funny.
He should have done better when he had Nick Aldis.
Yeah, it's just something.
Who's a hell of a worker.
Yeah, there's just something missing there. I don't know. What do you think, Jack? National Wrestling.
Well, I've been watching. I got that package last year, and I think I've still got one pay-per-view left on that. But I don't know. They were going in the right direction for a good while last year, and then kind of got off track. But I want to say that I have hope that they're heading in the right direction again. And they have got some great young talent there. I mean, some of these folks are really good. On the other hand, he's using some that I just have to show them the door. I mean, their time is just done, or they're too young and don't know what they're doing. He used to be in WWE, and I can't remember his name. He used to be partnered up with Miz years ago, but they had him on the last pay-per-view that I watched. Alex Riley, and that was probably one of the worst things I ever seen in my life. I mean, he was absolutely horrible. Had no business being out there, And it honestly, that match was so bad it kind of stunk up the next two because you couldn't get out of your mind how bad that was.
Well,
but they do have good talent.
Well, apparently this match with the Masked Man. I think it's the Beast, was so bad they had to run somebody that wasn't supposed to be on the show to next weekend on the match there.
The Beast Mode, ain't it? What is his name? The Beast Mode?
What really hurt NWA's relaunch was the Cornette controversy at the beginning.
Yeah.
It turned off a lot of people with Cornette's comment, which was something he'd said before. I'm not excusing it, but it wasn't as big a deal as people made it out to be. Yeah. The fact that they threw Cornette under the bus, a third of their audience got pissed at what Cornette said and turned it off. And then more than half of their audience turned it off when Cornette got fired.
Yeah.
That killed them. And that was at the very beginning.
He could make it, though. The National Wrestling Alliance is a name, but it's a name that only older people know. So it's not going to grant you any younger audience because they don't know what the National Wrestling Alliance is. It's our age or older, basically. That's the only people know what the National Wrestling Alliance is. But I think he could do it. He's got a great production. Production looks great. He just doesn't have long-term storylines that make any sense. And it's just and we call Angle program and blow off. He just doesn't have it. And it's
You know what he needs? You guys.
we'd probably last 3 weeks.
But that's what he needs. He
we'd
needs
be
someone to put him in the right
training.
direction. You know, he needs people who know the business from behind the business. Not fans, not people who are new to the business. He needs people who knew or know how to run a wrestling business. Not a booker so much. Let him book if he wants. That's fine. But he needs someone that knows the business.
My question, and again, I'm not trying to start anything, as you know. That's the first show, and the first thing I would do if I was Corgan, I would try to film and record the show in color, because it looked like it was in black and white. And I think it's a novelty idea to do it in black and white, but I think color would be the way to go in a TV show like that.
Have any of you guys seen the interviews he's been doing? He's signing Legends contracts.
No, I haven't seen that.
No, I missed those.
Like Rodney's favorite, Austin Idol, got signed. And there's like a full hour-and-a-half interview with Austin and Billy Corgan available on YouTube. They're great. And he's going after these, names that people may remember and signing them to Legends deals to help promote the shows. And if you watch those interviews, you could see Corgan just loves us and is a fanboy. It's like a little kid grows up to make a Star Wars film because he was such a big fan. That's what Billy Corgan is to the NWA. God love him for it, but he needs not fanboy. He needs business.
Yeah, if he wants to make money in the wrestling business, you need to get wrestling personnel. And there's a lot of people out there. I know he gets Ricky Morton. I mean, that's a very smart person that knows wrestling business. To your guest from Buffalo, you're much younger than I. Do you know about Chuck Healy calling the matches from the auditorium on Channel 4?
I am probably not much younger than you. I just look so darn good. But Chuck Healy is a legend in Buffalo. Broadcasting legend. One of Buffalo's most famous shows of all time. Ran for like 150 years. And I think it's back on TV in Buffalo now. Beat the Champ. Because Buffalo loves bowling. And it was a bowling show. And you're talking huge ratings of people tuning in to watch locals bowl. Okay, this is Buffalo. Let me go back. For people who don't know Buffalo, I always like to say there have been 4 presidential assassinations in history. I'm not going to ask you to name them because that just puts you on the spot. Jack would probably get most of them. Rodney probably knows all of them. Brent, you would know one. But
Yeah, probably wouldn't even know one.
So you got Abraham Lincoln, assassinated Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C. Ford's Theater is now a museum. You had Garfield, assassinated. He was on a train car. That train car is now part of a museum. You had John Kennedy, assassinated Dealey Plaza, Dallas, from the window of the book depository, supposedly, right? Well, that's a museum now, marked on the spot. Other presidential assassination was McKinley. He was assassinated in Buffalo. What stands where McKinley was assassinated is a bowling alley.
Whoa.
But there's a reason. It was the Pan Am exhibit in 1902. They were all temporary buildings. Everything was torn down afterwards, and the city was built around it. And then they're like, maybe we should have put something up for the spot of the president. So a couple blocks away, there's a plaque that says the president was shot here, but he wasn't. He was actually shot where the bowling alley is. That's Buffalo. But Chuck Healy was the host of Beat the Champ and Buffalo Wrestling from the odd. There's so little footage of Chuck Healy around. I've been searching for it for years. I know other people who have, and we found some. Absolute legend in Buffalo broadcasting. And, I don't remember him calling wrestling because I am a bit younger. But the stuff I've heard, I loved it because it was just that pure 1950s professional sports broadcaster. He broadcasted that way. And I love that, treating it like a sport, and it was great.
Paul said that it was the Beat the Champ at 5, wrestling at 6. That was good. Hello, all from Southeast Alabama. Michael Barr, Black Bart.
That's Michael New Knee Bar.
New knee bar. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. He's got the new knees.
Trying
Who
to
was
be
the
like me.
Nature Boy? Well, truly, I believe Adrian Street might have been called the Nature Boy before Buddy Rogers was called the Nature Boy. I'm not for sure. But I think Buddy Rogers would be known as the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Am I correct?
Yeah.
I know Adrian Street was called the Nature Boy as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what year that was, though.
Yeah, it was in the 50s.
So, but I believe it was. And then came Nature Boy Ric Flair and Nature Boy Buddy Landell and Nature Boy Paul Lee, and then Nature Boy. There's all kinds of Nature Boy.
Roger Kirby.
Roger Kirby was
Stanley Lane.
Rodney West.
I'm not a Nature Boy. Thank you.
Hey, do you remember Michael Hayes asked? I don't know what that is. Is that somebody that runs naked through the woods?
That's what I was thinking too.
That's what Michael always said.
Running around with nothing but leaves on. You know what I'm saying?
How much did Flair owe Olivia Walker for the robes? You know what? Back then they were like $5,000. Even back in the 70s and 80s, they were $5,000.
Greg Valentine once told me that him and Flair used to compete to get the best robe. Everyone forgets Greg Valentine had those amazing robes when he came over to the WWF, but he had them all from before. And he said the most he ever spent on one was $8,000. That's what he told me. Now, he might have told other people $10,000. He might have told other people $20,000. You know how these stories go over the years. It's all about catching the big fish.
Olivia Walker was not cheap. So if you wanted cheaper,
no, and you can see why though. I mean, it was really top-notch stuff. That was no rinky-dink stuff.
If you ever picked up a Wrestling 2 robe, a Dusty Rhodes robe, Ric Flair robe, they were heavy material. They were heavy robes. And don't ever put Michael Hayes's on the Jimmy Powell tied up in a knot and then say that you're the one that did it. He threw me under the bus. Evening, guys. I am so sorry. I've missed y'all the past few weeks. I've been working a lot. Florida is the blue air state this time of year. Christopher Hughes said, evening, Mr. Lord. Hope you're well. Richard Hood. Flair fell out with Jim Ross over the plane from hell. He was just telling what Flair did.
That everybody knew what Flair did. Flair had been doing that forever. Everybody knew about it.
If you want to be remembered,
everyone tries to pretend they didn't now. You can't rewrite history. I'm sorry. Is it wrong to say times were different then? Yeah, but you know what? Times were different then. And everybody saw him doing that stuff for 25 years and laughed. Yeah. So now they're all trying to claim they're appalled. BS. Right. They're not appalled. No, they're appalled for the camera.
Well, if you want to be remembered well, act better.
Look, if I could helicopter, I probably would. All right. I'm not saying I approve of that. I'm not saying on a plane. I would just in front of the mirror.
One of those little Tonka toy helicopters.
I'm Irish. There's no propeller. But no, I'm just saying, these people, they all act like they were so appalled by his behavior. The fact of the matter is, I'm appalled by his behavior. I'm sure you're appalled by his behavior. But those people in the documentaries, none of them were appalled by his behavior because they laughed at it and encouraged it for 30 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. Let's see. Andre. Let's say Corbell. Dutch Mantell is 10 times the human Ric Flair is. And there is some truth there. Carl Smith got in late. Hello from the Mid-South. Andre also said Kennedy was assassinated from the grassy knoll.
And that's marked off, too, as a spot. There's no bowling alley on the grassy knoll now. That's my point.
Of course, if you're a conspiracy theorist, there should be about 10 markings there.
10 lanes, 10 frames. It's all a conspiracy.
Christopher Hughes. Dutch is a good man. I won't say what else he said. And unlike Manny Fernandez, he is actual Vietnam.
Actual, true, veteran.
Well, Manny will get upset when you
call him out on the truth. Yeah, he don't like that.
I'm thinking, well, he's not telling the truth. So, what's up, crew? We're sitting here talking professional wrestling. Let's see. Paul said, thanks, Brian, for your tribute to Chuck. Let's see. Andre, got to give Manny credit, though. He got the receipt for Brody. That means if you're Manny's friend, he's got your back no matter what, even though Manny is known for being a gum stretcher of the truth. He'd always not show up sometimes, Manny would. He'd just leave and be gone for weeks, and you wouldn't even know where he went. They would say, well, where's Manny? I don't know. I don't know where he went. He'd show up 3 or 4 weeks later. I guess he thought he still had a job. I don't know. I don't know why he would do that. Let's see. Ric Flair all the way, baby. Ric Flair. Let's see. I like the guy with glasses and beer. His commentary messes as well with the boys. Meshes with the boys. Let's see. Brian, keep your shamrock covered.
Yeah, it's not even a 4-leaf clover, friends. Remind me to tell you the leprechaun joke off the air.
Okay. Jack, what was it like to be in the ring with Bam Bam Gordy?
Man, it was great. According to how much he had partied beforehand, we either had good matches or we had some great matches. But absolutely one of my favorite guys to ever share a ring with.
Folks, there's some footage on YouTube of the one and only Jack Lord in the ring with Bam Bam. And what amazed me, because I've never met you in person, you did not look small.
No.
Next to Bam Bam Gordy. That's impressive.
We were the same height. We weighed about the same. And that's why we meshed well together. Plus, we didn't care to hit each other, to make it.
You could tell there's some potatoes thrown,
and we love that.
Christopher Hughes said, "Yes, it's like laughing at a kid every time he cusses. For years you laugh, then he does it at a bad time. Who can you blame? You. They should have not said it was all right then, but now." It was the wrestling business.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, if all those guys that he was trying to get the chuckle out of, if they had all no-sold it one time, he'd quit. He'd never done it anymore.
No. But they you know why they sold it? Because they thought he could help them get somewhere.
Now I was always an angel, but we were all around guys, who would do stuff like that. And at the time, the mindset was, it's just boys being the boys. And yeah, that's funny. Kenny Wayne running around the dressing room naked looking for his lack of a helicopter. Those things were funny. Now, no, they wouldn't be funny now.
Well, I'll tell you now, the helicopter itself might still be borderline funny. It's the cornering people, forcing it crossed the helicopter might cross a line, but boys being boys. If Ric Flair's did you ever hear Roddy Piper's story about Alfred Hayes?
I don't think so.
Apparently, Lord Alfred Hayes could do one of those giant Vietnam chopper helicopters. Okay,
a Chinook.
And he used to chase people around the locker room, swinging it around. Well, apparently the night Piper was asked by Geigel to come work for him, Geigel came in the dressing room and Piper was laying on the massage table, talking to Geigel, all nervous, and all of a sudden he feels something in his hand. He's trying to ignore it because he's trying to do business. It gets signed with Bob Geigel, and everyone's laughing. He turns around and it's Alfred Hayes' crank. He snuck up a man and stuck it in his hand as he's talking to Geigel. You know what? That's funny in the locker room. It's not funny when you're doing that to a stewardess.
No, you're right about that. We many times there was a lot of guys that would get in trouble. Buddy Landell was one of them. He got in trouble so many times for things he did that he shouldn't have done, and we did not find it funny. So people realized we did not. We were mainly office, so we never found that stuff funny because we knew it would hurt business if people saw that being done. it would hurt our business. So we never laughed at it. So we would always say, we don't think that's very funny.
Terry Funk would tell me that he always complained when he'd go in the locker room and there's big fat Dusty naked as a jaybird in the chair. I don't know what kind of marks he's leaving. So apparently Dusty liked to be naked. So
I believe he would sit around. I know he was in his underwear a lot. Now, he was not completely naked, but he was in his underwear.
Kevin Sullivan used to do the same thing. Walk over to you, give you your finishes, have nothing on but his boots.
I tell you what, corporate world wouldn't put up with that today, would they? They would get me very upset about that type of. We've seen a lot of stuff growing up the rest of the business too. We try not to talk about that. We try not to talk about those things. Jack, any last comments before we get off of here today?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that's contacted me, messaged me, commented, whatever. Losing my son is one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. And you guys reaching out and offering your prayers and your friendship has helped me more than I can ever say. And I just want to say this. I love y'all, all of y'all, the ones here, all of you out there. I hope you never go through what I had to go through. But I so appreciate everything that you've done for me during this time.
All right, Brian, any last comments before we leave?
Well, before I go on to my last comments, I want to say again to Jack how much I love you, and I'm there for you, brother. I know we've never met in person, but, I feel like you're a brother to me, and I can't imagine going through what you went through, but the fact that the two of you had each other in each other's lives was something very special, and that'll always be there.
Yeah, it will.
And, I could just do shameless plugs now. Go listen to my podcast, Transatlantic History Ramblings, get my book. But more importantly, keep Jack in your thoughts, keep Jack's family in your thoughts. And we love you, big guy.
Right.
We'll just leave it right there.
All right, folks, we will see everybody next week right here on Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Maybe next week we're going to talk Wahoo McDaniel. We talked about him a lot on this program, so I think we'll talk a little bit about Wahoo.
One thing I have to say, and those of you who watch SmackDown this past week, that the supposed new WWE Universal Champion was beaten by his own shirt during the TV show this past Friday night.
What?
Yes.
Boy,
yes,
I'm watching a lot of great television watching.
He was beaten by his own shirt. He could not get it off. He couldn't wrestle his way out of his shirt. How in the world do they think he's going to be champion? It was embarrassing.
Who was the winner, by the way, with Ric Flair, Dutch Mantell? Was it a tie? Most of it. What do you think?
I went with the Dutch.
Yeah, I'd have to go by Dutch. At least Flair put out a peace flag, so I'll give him immense credit for that.
Yes, he did.
Dutch is the winner because Flair might be the nature boy. Flair might have his show with Conrad, but you know what? That show Dutch does with the kid from England gets much better ratings and better views, and it's a better show.
Dutch tells great stories.
Yes,
So story time with Dutch. There's no better person than Jerry the King Lawler podcast. Nice work, guys. Thank you so much. We are going to say goodbye to everybody. We certainly do appreciate you being part of Pro Wrestling Inside Now. Every week now, we have grown 1,000 people every week on Facebook, and we certainly do appreciate you. We need you over at YouTube, though. We need people to move over to YouTube. So if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, get over there. I hit my mic. Get over there and do subscribe.
Right. It's very possible the main event for SmackDown will be
Don't
Cody
make me get
Rhodes
my
versus
cowboy.
Shirt. It's going to be fantastic.
Hey, Jack, you still got that bell over there?
Not easily, but I can.
Well, okay. Now you don't have to worry
No,
about it.
it's too late now.
I'm gonna ring that bell. Let's just keep on ringing that bell until we go off the air. Ring that bell right there on there you go. There you go. We'll see everybody next week. Inside Now.